Hey guys, what is up? Corey here, back with another video for you all. I've got a mic, thanks to whoever that was in the last video recommended the sound updates. Today I want to talk to you about flow, but probably not in the way that you're usually accustomed to hearing about it or talking about flow, because most of the conversations around flow are geared towards athletes or artists. But there's not a lot of talk about flow for the average, everyday human experience of the modern knowledge worker, the person who has to channel their flow and focus and attention at home and at work in a deep and meaningful way. Because most conversations about flow treat it like a state you have to enter. It's something like a sport that you have to sort of like get into, something you have to unlock, something that happens almost accidentally. And misunderstanding that is why I think so many people are chasing their attention around every day and never really fully experiencing flow in a sustainable and repeatable way. But I'm going to show you today a simple framework that can help you with that. Because I don't like to think of flow as this performance thing. I think it's much more valuable than that. Flow to me is a really immersive experience that can not just help us perform better or create better, but live and work better too. And when I say live and work better, I mean live and work from a more integrated place of well being, not from a place of stress or overwhelm, which is what a lot of us are used to now. You can watch my last video on time management and you'll understand a bit more of what I mean there. But I've been obsessed with flow from a young age. I grew up here in Canada playing competitive hockey, and to me, that was the ultimate flow experience. I never had to try to zone in. It just really happened naturally. My body and mind would just sync up into the present moment. And I'd find myself almost floating in this effortless, fluid experience that I was never really fully self conscious of. My hands would move effortlessly, holding my stick and moving the puck. My legs would move simultaneously with the rest of my body, kind of gliding my skates on the ice, keeping me in motion, controlling the movement and the moment without me really actively thinking about it or trying to control it. But as I got older, play became more of an afterthought. I sort of lost my connection to flow. When I began my career in advertising, I started to get a little bit of a sense of it back, but it always sort of came in these fluid, fleeting moments, almost by accident. And then I came across books like Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and Stealing Fire by Jamie Wheel. And they really transformed my whole idea around focus and play and attention and work and meaning. And I started to understand that flow is more of a trainable skill than it is some accidental state I would just find myself in from time to time. I started to make some adjustments in my lifestyle and in my workflows to sort of train myself to access flow more regularly. Then, about 2 years ago, I was lucky enough to spend some time studying under Stephen Kotler, who wrote this book, and Ryan Doris at the Flow Research Collective, where I learned from some of the top neuroscientists in the world on the art and science of flow and peak performance. And from there, what was once a fleeting kind of one off peak experience on the hockey rink in my backyard became a really repeatable, recurring experience that I could tap into each day. My life started to change dramatically from here. After applying more deeply what I had learned, I kind of found myself effortlessly and deeply engaged in my work and in my life again. I found myself more aware of my inner world and how my monkey mind would sort of get in the way of helping me stay present. And what I want to share with you today is a summary of my studies on flow and my experience building it into my lifestyle and my workflows. And the core of it starts with understanding, at least from my perspective, that flow isn't really a state you enter, it's a cycle. And misunderstanding that, I think, is why so many people chase flow and never really experience it sustainably. Let me explain that a little bit. So, when it comes to work, for example, a lot of people think that flow looks like this. You sit down, you feel inspired, you're fully focused, time disappears, and the work just feels effortless. And in short, really that is what can happen, but when it doesn't, A lot of people assume that something's wrong. They think that they're distracted, they're unmotivated, they're not disciplined enough, they just don't have it in them that day. Or worse, they blame it on something like ADHD and say that their brain just doesn't work like that. But for me, that's not true. At least that's what I experience, and that's what I've experienced with a lot of other people that I've helped build this skill up. What's actually happening is much more simpler and much more human. They're treating flow as a state they have to unlock rather than a cycle they have to enter. And they're trying to enter at the middle of the cycle without respecting the parts that come before it. Let me show you. This is the flow cycle, something Stephen Kotler came up with through his research and his study of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work of the 1980s. Every flow state follows this same predictable pattern. And if you learn to follow it, you can experience flow more easily and more often. It starts with the struggle phase. You all know this experience, I'm sure. You sit down and you try to focus and you can't get your to-do list out of your head. You keep thinking about your morning and the argument you had with your partner. You get distracted by everything else you could be doing. In this phase, your brain releases stress chemicals like cortisol and norepinephrine, and you enter a beta brainwave pattern. And this is where a lot of people give up because they become overwhelmed by the struggle of the mind instead of staying with it and moving through what is naturally occurring as you try to focus, because focus is challenging and it's rewarding. And if you stick with it, you begin to release. But a lot of people give up here because of the nature of reality where our focus is constantly being challenged in so many different ways. But when you do, you enter that second phase, the release phase, where chemicals like nitric oxide release and you enter an alpha brainwave pattern. Your brain downregulates and your mind begins to declutter, and the things you were struggling with begin to disappear. And you start to immerse in the present moment, in the thing that you're trying to focus on. And then you enter the flow phase. And this is where dopamine and endorphins flood your brain. You enter a theta gamma like pattern. Your sense of time disappears. Your self consciousness goes offline, and you really deepen into that immersive state of effortless action. You're not forcing anything, you're not controlling anything. Your body and your mind are working as one as you're swept up in this neurochemical dance of clarity that only comes when you let go. And then comes the final phase, which is recover. And this is such an important part of the flow cycle that a lot of people skip. Your brain can't really stay in this dopamine bath all day. It needs time to recalibrate. You need serotonin and oxytocin to wash over you so you can restore those chemicals needed for flow again. You need to disconnect from anything that drives dopamine. This might look like going for a walk, stretching, breathing, journaling. I like to think of it as active recovery. You don't need to go to sleep, but you need to let that mind and body rest. The other important thing to understand about the flow cycle is that it usually uses equal parts of the nervous system. In the struggle and release phases, your sympathetic nervous system is active. You're energized, alert, awake. It might feel like anxiety or fear, but it doesn't have to. When you know release is coming, this energy becomes useful, and you fall into that parasympathetic state of calm and relaxation. And this integration creates a really, really healthy state of awakeness where you're alert and relaxed. A simple way to think about it is the balance of discipline and surrender. Discipline is that preparation, and surrender is letting go. Now, if you made it this far, you're probably wondering how to apply this to your life and work. So I'm going to give you a simple 90-minute flow practice. And it starts with preparation. This is that discipline piece. You need to give yourself one clear goal, one container of time, and one environment that supports focus, supports flow, supports the channeling of attention into something that matters. So what you do is you create a space where you can work for 90 minutes. This needs to be quiet, low light, dim light, ideally natural light like I'm in right now. Headphones are really important, and I'll explain that in a second. And have a timer with you so that you can put yourself into that container of time for flow to be activated. And then pull out a single piece of paper. I like to use these small little cue cards as they help me to sort of like remove the clutter and kind of channel my attention, my focus, and my actions. Then write out your goal for the 90-minute session. And then underneath that goal, write out all of the goal-directed actions that you need to complete it. Goal-directed actions are important. Each action should be framed as a goal because this helps to trigger dopamine and keeps your attention directed. So make sure that each step moves you towards that final outcome. And then when you're ready, set the timer and go. You could think of this as a session if you were to write a book, for example, or you need to do some research on a project you're doing, or you need to build a new sales and marketing plan. You can set this up by laying out the goal, something you can complete, and then each of the goals underneath of it would be other goals to drive you towards that main goal. So for writing a book, for example, you would say maybe you're writing one chapter. So that is your high level goal. The goal directed actions would look like opening Google Drive, step 1, finding your writing document, step 2, pulling all of your research to direct the flow of writing for that session and for that chapter. Then bulleting out a summary of what the chapter is going to be about. These are all those steps that drip dopamine to get you towards that end goal and keep you directed. And then some other kind of things you can add, I call them sort of flow enhancing supportive tools. Like I said before, headphones, these are very, very important. You want to distract the outside world. You want to shut off the outside world. And I like to use instrumental or frequency music. I'll drop some in the description of this video, so you can grab a few free Spotify playlists that I like to use. And then you could add something like scents. I keep a little essential oil of peppermint by my desk. This helps to waken up the brain and keep it alert. And if you're interested, I also host a free weekly flow state session I call the Flow State Incubator. This happens every Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We drop in together on a Zoom room. We share our focus and our work inside of an accountability room. It's like a deep work meditation. That's how I like to frame it. And a lot of people say they get more done in these 90-minute sessions than they do all week. So I'll put that description down below as well, and invite you out so you can try this out for yourself and see what I mean, because we'll take you all the way through this entire flow cycle so you can see how it works in real time. Yeah, that's it for today. I hope you found this video helpful. There are some buttons below somewhere where you can click to let me know if you liked it, subscribe, like, that kind of stuff. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.